What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 183.
183.
I was waiting on this Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Tuesday, 74 days from the kickoff of Oklahoma's 2025 season. Kind of getting a little closer with each passing pod. Got a few football housekeeping things we want to get into today. Another commitment added in 2026. They've addressed the running back spot. We'll get into that a little bit. A couple other, like I said, kind of housekeeping things with some kickoff times and windows, other, kind of things like that we'll kind of sift through. We'll also get into some of the Diamond Sports portal stuff. Softball still quiet. Do we expect it to change? Are they done? We'll kind of discuss that a little bit as well. Meanwhile, baseball has added a couple more bodies. I'll break that down a little bit as well. So kind of a nice and neat little Tuesday show here in the middle of June on the program as we cover a few different things here before getting into some other recruiting stuff with Colin later this week, Champion Barbecue this weekend. So a lot of recruiting stuff kind of going on right now. That's the storyline, and that's certainly where we'll start. Obviously, Oklahoma, we talked about this a little bit last week, guys. It wasn't that long ago that Oklahoma had gone over 100 days, 3+ months without a commitment, and everyone was kind of saying, what's the deal? In 2026, this class is microscopic, and is there any momentum at all? They found it, right? They've added bodies. We got into that a little bit last week. They've been able to add a number of guys in the last couple of weeks, and they made another addition yesterday with DeZephen Walker, composite four-star running back in 2026 from Peculiar, Missouri. He is a top 5 player in Missouri, a top 20 running back for us at 24/7 Sports. Composite number 370 overall player in the class. He is one of their higher rated guys in the class. I think he's the 4th highest rated guy in the composite in the class. He's their 11th commit. Just reaction here, obviously, I'm probably get into it a little more with Colin later in the week, as he obviously knows all these guys so well. But for you guys, they didn't have a running back yet. So DeMarco Murray gets on the board in 2026, and they continue. I think really the biggest takeaway probably for us would just be the momentum continues. Another guy added. They're up to 11 commits now in 2026, and they get another offensive addition here with DeZephen Walker.
Yeah, like you said, it's a big momentum thing, especially just riding the high off of some of these visits. Seems to be things are going really well with this new front office staff in place, and just kind of their new approach to the recruiting model. But the thing that stands out to Walker about me really is you look at his offer list. I know, like you said, composite 4-star guy, but he's got offers from Georgia, from Florida, from Miami, from Notre Dame. Like, he's got some big time offers in there, so it's not like he's some slouch or anything. Like you said, top 25 running back in the composite, one of the best players in Missouri. So you're recruiting your region pretty well there. So I think this could be a good pickup for them for down the line.
Yeah, I spent some time watching his film just to kind of see what kind of guy he was. Because you look at his frame at 5'11", 190, you think maybe he's a running back that's just running over guys. And it doesn't seem like that when you look at his tape. It looks like he's winning based on his vision and how he's exploding through the hole. So like he finds the gap there and it just bursts through. And he's outrunning a lot of these guys when you check his film out. That's a really, really good solid frame to start with. When you have a guy like that and his size, DeMarco Murray was a very big running back in his days. That's a really good guy to learn from. And his dad played professional football, so he has that, he knows how to get there type of situation as well with him. So it's a really good pickup for OU because he has all those intangibles. And I love that he wins with his vision and not just his body and tries to overpower guys, because it's not necessarily the case you can do it all the time in the SEC. So winning with your vision there is pretty good. So that's what I liked about his tape and liked about him.
Yeah, he's a good player. I saw some OU fans kind of point at it. Kind of look like a mini version of Ramondre Stevenson. I think that's probably not a horrible comp, but obviously, again, I'll get into that more probably with Colin later this week. But, it's a guy that, like Tom said, really impressive offer sheet, composite full. We just have him as a 3 at 24/7 Sports, but, this is a guy that, has a lot of upside, and they needed a running back in 26, right? They hadn't addressed that spot yet. They've been kind of going after a couple. So DeMarco Murray to get on the board is certainly a nice thing. And, this class is starting to come into shape a little bit, right? There's still some questions. We're still all waiting on Bo Bentley. That's still the big, thing that's hanging over all this. Jade O'Neal just visited Florida State, right? So, there's not a lot of belief that that's going to stick. and they're going to need a quarterback in 26. So, until you have that solidified, it's hard to feel great about the overall direction of the class, but they're in decent shape. They started to add up to 11 guys now, like I said, including O'Neal for now. Number 33 in our composite team rankings. That's going to go up. Class is still small with 11 guys, but just continue the momentum. I mean, this is several pickups now in the last couple of weeks, so it just kind of gives you some good things to feel about going in to Champion Barbecue this weekend, which is obviously the biggest recruiting weekend of the year for Oklahoma, and we'll preview that a lot with Callaway later this week. Kind of get into all the names to know there and all that good stuff, but just continuing the good momentum more than anything. Obviously, like what we kind of said, just as you continue to add and feel like Oklahoma has some momentum again on the recruiting trail. Jim Nagy putting together his first class, and so far so good here in 2026. Speaking of Jim Nagy, front office staff got finalized late last week. I kind of, we brought it up. It came up in passing when Colin and I did the podcast on Thursday. Just kind of the fact that they announced, Oklahoma formally announced, the 6-person staff beneath Jim Nagy, so 7 in total. So on the Board of Regents meeting was last week. You kind of got some salaries here, not all of them, but, the salaries that we do know add up to just a shade under 1.5 million. That's with a couple guys that we don't know. So you can say, obviously, very confidently that they're north of 1.5 million, maybe getting close to 2, depending on what some of these guys are making on a yearly basis. Quite the investment in the front office staff. When you guys see that, first off, a 7-person front office staff is not the norm in college football. Pushing maybe toward 2 million in salary. I guess just your reaction to kind of all of that as we kind of get close to this new era of college football for Oklahoma. I mean, this is quite an investment that the Sooners are putting in to this part of it to try and build up, the roster management aspect of their program. It caught my eye when reading Tom's story. Like, when you kind of put it that way, like, that is quite an investment in not even coaches or players, but front office staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, bottom line, like you said, it's a big investment, and you look at the experience of the guys that they've kind of put together there with Jim Nagy. I mean, they've got over 60 years combined experience in college football scouting departments, 67 years combined NFL experience. You got a guy in Lake Dawson who was one of the top executives in the Bills front office there. You got guys like Cale Pearson, who's been a GM at the college level at Air Force and is from the state of Oklahoma, so he knows the area pretty well. Taylor Red has obviously got player personnel experience at the college level in Wake Forest and has worked with the New England Patriots, and then with the athlete group before coming over with Jim Nagy over there. Charlie Parkinson, Stacey Ford, just up and down this front office staff is just kind of eye-opening experience from different parts of the country, and just different kind of programs and different levels, whether it's NFL or college. Guys that have experience with the portal, guys that have experience exclusively with high school recruits and stuff like that. So it's a really I think says a lot about how much they believe in this new model and what they think that it can do to kind of help them get the roster to where they need it to be to compete for championships. And I'm not sure they're done yet. I know there was a posting floating around yesterday that looks like they're looking to add a director of scouting to that staff too. So we'll see how many more pieces get added in there, but it's clear they're building this out, and they're putting together a little army of player personnel to help make this roster what it needs to be, just in terms of evaluating guys, figuring out their NIL evaluation, and getting guys that are going to be fit for what Brent Venables and this staff want to do.
Yeah, it's a good thing overall. I mean, I absolutely love it. I mean, when you put a bunch of guys together that know what they're doing, obviously you're bound to do something pretty good. So I think that's what Jim Nagy is doing with his staff. And Oklahoma's just going more towards a pro model, which is where college sports are headed anyway. And so this is a good thing to be out front about it. And you talked about the money they're investing into it. They're really, really trying and going after it. So that's a good thing overall for them. So I really like what this group has as a whole. When you look at each guy's individual resume and you put them together, it's like that's a recipe for success. So we're hoping that that's where it's going to be, that maybe this season or down the line.
Yeah, it's just kind of, if you're, I feel like if you're an OU fan and you're kind of watching these moves, I feel like you have to be really excited to see Oklahoma. They go hire a guy like Jim Nagy, a big hire, big swing. We talked about that when they made the hire, that it made waves, right? A national college football was like, whoa, like that's quite a hire there as their general manager. And they've backed it up, right? Like they didn't just like, we have Jim, boom, like look what we did. Like they've now followed that up with giving him what he was looking for and what he wants to have and what he feels like that they need to be successful, which, like, James said, is like an NFL pro front office staff. And they're paying for top guys with NFL experience, guys with lots of college experience. I mean, decades and decades of experience combined between these guys. Like, it's really exciting. And it's very interesting to see how it looks. OU may kind of set the tone for the sport, really, and depending on how this kind of goes, and we'll see. Obviously, we won't know for another couple of years or so, at least, how this all kind of shakes out. But it's something that's very interesting. I kind of mentioned this briefly on Thursday with Colin, but Brent Venables, who's obviously like an older school guy, like his kind of embracing of this, and maybe he didn't have much of a choice on, to being totally honest, but by all accounts, it sounds like he's been very open and kind of embracing of this setup, which you have to have. You have to have the buy-in of the coach. And so, again, we won't totally know all this as far as how it's actually working or going to work until there's games being played and they start to win. But it feels like Oklahoma, maybe more so than any other point, in the last few years, kind of has their ducks in a row. Like they kind of know what they're doing a little bit, which it didn't always feel that way the last several years. They feel much more organized. So things to be encouraged by. And again, we got to see how it actually works. If they can actually win, that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. But some things to be excited by, certainly with Oklahoma football right now. The investment is really high, which is obviously a good thing.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Brent Venables buying into this, coaches, especially guys that have been around for as long as Brent has 30 years coaching experience, that they're creatures of nature. That they're very regimented. They have their fingerprints on all different parts of the program, and that's kind of just how they've been accustomed to. But a lot of these coaches are having to learn to adapt to this new age, with the transfer portal, with NIL, and now with the revenue sharing on the horizon here. I think you're going to see fewer and fewer, Bill Belichick types that are, coach, GM, and just handle everything throughout the program. And they're going to have to kind of compartmentalize what they're able to do and, trust, these front office staffs to kind of help with the roster building, help with the NIL stuff, help with the transfer portal, because there's more on, if you didn't have these new front offices coming in, you're just putting more and more on coaches' plates. We've kind of seen the effect of that. You see a lot of coaches now, saying that the main issue that college football is facing now is this transfer portal, because there's just so many different things going on that you don't know what your roster is going to look like until June, July, August even. So I think it's all beneficial. Again, we'll see how the results kind of bear out for them, but they're putting themselves in position to adapt well to this new landscape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you said, Tom. It's best for head coaches to really focus on the playbook and the relationships they're building with each individual player, not necessarily so much the money part of it. That's the new thing about it. So it's a good situation for coaches as well. They gotta adapt to it, but it's like it helps them out as well with somebody else is also a part of that NIL situation for them.
And we've mentioned that in various ways, the last couple of years that we've been doing this show. Brent Venables, I think we all think that Brent Venables can coach football. It's been more kind of everything else. Has he been able to manage everything else? And it's still like that stuff's not going to go away, but it certainly would be a lot easier with Jim Nagy and an army of front office staff behind him. So again, exciting times. We'll see how it shakes out when they play games. But exciting times right now for Oklahoma football. And on that note, we did get some kickoff times and TV windows and stuff last week. Sort of. The SEC went heavy on the flexes last week with the TV windows and stuff. It felt like more than last year. I didn't double check that. I feel like we had just a couple of flexes last year. This year there's 4, I believe. 4. Yeah, Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU are all flexed, which just means it won't be early. Beyond that, we don't know. It could be anywhere from 2:30 to 7:30, I think, Central Time. Anything stand out to you guys though from the kickoff times and windows? It's just that's all it is kickoff times, but it's just another sign that we're getting closer to the season. Anything that jumped out that you felt like you wanted to note from that last week?
On the SEC schedule, only one 11 a.m. home kickoff. That's the Missouri game. I know that's a big point of contention for fans from
could be 2.
Big 12 to
with Ole Miss. Said it could be 2 with Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
That was 11 a.m. before noon. Yeah,
but only one guaranteed. And then I think I made a point of this on the board. Because a couple people pointed out you have a couple of road games in that early window too. But one of them is Temple, and that. But both of the early road games are in Eastern time zones, so they're noon kickoffs instead of 11, so it's a little bit different, at least local time. But the Temple game, that's a 11 a.m. Central Time kick, and then at South Carolina, which I think is interesting because that might be one of the low-key trickier games on the schedule. Just I think a lot of people are starting to buy stock in South Carolina, after the season they had, and just the kind of player that Lenore Sellers is kind of developed into. So having an earlier game there might be beneficial for Oklahoma than having a raucous, primetime matchup there in Columbia. So we'll see. But again, it's just so many flex windows. It's hard to really pinpoint a lot because, like you mentioned even before that, we had the kickoff times for the first 3 weeks and the Texas game before that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the early kickoff times is what always sticks out to us. I mean, I feel like that's the biggest talking point for the fans. The fans really don't like them. I think the players like it. Like Danny Stutzman was telling us, he was like, you instead of sitting around all day, you can kind of just get situated and go. And so that's kind of like the way the players see it, but the fans and the media obviously have a different viewpoint of it. That's really what I'll be looking out for in terms of kickoff times. Because other than that, you're either getting the really big prime time spot. You have like that Michigan slot where it's like 6:30. Which is a pretty good slot for that type of game and that type of environment. And then the other ones, and you kind of just throw them in there, which, like you said, with all the flexes, it's a little bit hard to really judge on what's going to happen. I guess it's going to depend on how good these teams are going to be during that point of the season. And so you base it off of that.
Yeah, I think that was something that, and maybe it's reading a little too into it, maybe on my end, but with so many flexes, 3 of them are in November. It's almost like we don't know how good OU is going to be. But we, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a little bit of some hesitation to commit to anything as far as a primetime slot, but also one of the flexibility, the flex to be able to do so depending on how the season kind of plays out. I do agree with the early kicks, especially I think getting the early kick in Columbia, which Tom noted in South Carolina, is a little bit of a break. That place, it kind of selfishly for us, I kind of wanted to see it at night because that's always an underrated, I think, home atmosphere. I've kind of been talking about that, since the end of last year, that Columbia is one of those places that doesn't get a lot of credit for how great it is, I think. And so I was excited to see it potentially under the lights. But for Oklahoma's sake, catching that early is probably a good thing from an atmosphere perspective. And it's also the week after the Texas game, which generally OU is, at least probably historically, but certainly recently has kind of played like crap the week after the Texas game. And that's when the South Carolina game falls. So you'll take any little help that you can as far as that goes, because the last several years, the week after the Texas game has not been OU's best performance. Even last year where you thought, well, they lost by 30, they'll come out maybe we're a little ready to go. That was when they played South Carolina at home, and it was 21-0 in 5 minutes. So any little leg up at all that you can get, you'll take. But yeah, nothing, no grand takeaways here, obviously, but still nice to know. Nice to be able to plan the season out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at like the full SEC slate, but you mentioned November. 3 of their 4 games in November are flex right now. Yeah. And I think that a lot of that is just the league and the networks giving themselves the flexibility to try to, promote the big matchups that could have playoff implications, could have SEC championship game implications, and just kind of see where things stand, 5 months from now?
Absolutely. That show, by the way, was not the best viewing experience. We did not need a full hour show for kickoff times and windows. The SEC knows how to like sell this stuff, though. I mean, the fact that they had a show for the schedule and then another show for the times, and there will be another. Like they know how to build everything up into being a thing. Not the best viewing experience ever, but we got through it. We powered through. Tom hung in there and got the story up over on Sooners Illustrated. 74 days. Did you guys see too? And that's a full blown topic, but did you guys see? Phil Steele, #1, like I think how do they term it? Phil Steele's Colorful Magazine, which is gospel. I think it was most underrated or sneaky under the radar team.
Like biggest surprise team, I think.
Surprise team, I think that's what it was. Oklahoma, #1, biggest surprise team. So I mean, there's I
mean, just the moves they've made. The portal has been outstanding. I mean, we've talked about it. John Mateer and running back. Bringing Ott, like it's just like. A lot of the issues they had were on the offensive side, and if you can just be decent on that side, you could maybe add 1 or 2 more wins than you had, last year. And it changed a lot of what this program looks like at this point in time. So that's just it's a good situation to be in, I guess, where people are actually starting to realize this is a team you may want to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you guys at this point in the summer? Are you guys still just full blown summer? Do you start to look ahead a little? Do you get the fever for football? When is it like get real? Media days for you? We're still 74 days away. When does it start to feel like
media days?
Yeah.
Because we're at the point of the year where it's just like so slow and like
it is slow.
I like this week I just started my like early opponent scouting report series. So like yesterday I looked at Illinois State. This morning it was Michigan. Tomorrow's going to be Temple, and so on for the next couple of weeks. And that gives you a little taste because like you start to dive into the opponents a little bit more. But yeah, I think like once media day kind of rolls around, you're like, okay, locked in. Because like from the middle of July until end of December, start of January is just like a full throttle sprint, marathon, whatever. So I try to compartmentalize and like embrace the off season as much as I can because I know how much of a grind those 6-7 months can be. But yeah, I mean, it's still kind of off-season mode, but it's creeping toward it. And when you start reading about the opponents and be like, oh, this is who they returned. This is who they added. Oh, look what they can do here.
Right. Yeah, I kind of get the chance to like wind down from softball, do some transfer portal stuff there, and then look at the recruits in the next class that's coming up. And Brent Venables camp does a really good job out there. We can kind of see a lot of these guys that they're going after. So I kind of get that type of aspect for it. So when SEC Media Days gets rolling around, that's when I'm like, all right, let's just focus on the season here pretty much and go from there.
Yeah, no, I'll admit. I mean, this year is a little different because we have the Thunder around here, which are kind of they're the talk of the state right now. Certainly, there you go. One win away.
One more.
They're the talk of the state, obviously, right now. So it's a little different this year. But most years for me, I mean, once softball and baseball are done, which obviously varies. But whenever that is in June, and it's like the next OU thing that we cover, a game at least, will be the opener. It start to look ahead a little bit. How long is it? How many weeks? I certainly the same thing. It's on. Like I try to enjoy the summer. I love the summer. I love the hot weather. I love take some time off, but you can't help but kind of look ahead a little. And we're getting a little closer. The day, like I said, every show it's like that number. It's still 74 days, but it keeps whittling down a little more, little by little.
And I'll forgive you, Josh, for overlooking the most important sporting event going on this week, and that is the Florida Panthers having a chance to clinch a second consecutive Stanley Cup tonight.
I don't think
second consecutive. Wow,
is too dialed in.
Yeah, I had no idea. Second consecutive. Wow, impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. We might have a lot of championships on this pod this summer. Maybe we'll see. We shall see. All right, we'll let Tom step out. James and I are going to do a little Diamond Sports portal stuff. Not a ton to get into there, but we got a little bit of stuff we want to talk about before we send you on your way. Tom, appreciate you as always. We'll catch up with you next time.
Later, guys.
All right.
All right, we now shift into the Diamond Sports portion of the program. I cover baseball. James covers softball for us here at Sooners Illustrated. A little transfer portal talk. James, softball, we talked about it last week, added Sidney Berzon from LSU. Huge get. Clearly comes in, looking like potentially they're number one, their ace, and like they needed that. Yep. We kind of figured, or at least generally speaking, it was That's the first one. We'll see what else they do. We're coming here, a little over a week later. That's it. That's been just Sydney Berzon. So I guess my question to you is an obvious one. Is that going to be it, you think, for Oklahoma, in the portal? Obviously, just the one addition. Not that they needed a ton. It's a young team. We talk about that all year, right? Young team. So a lot of the team is going to be back. They've had some players obviously leave through the portal. Nothing huge. It doesn't seem, at least. You can speak to it better than me. But just, I guess, a little check-in with you on the portal for softball. Just the one addition. Do you think there's a chance they could still add? Are you thinking that they're probably chill with where they are? Anything of who they've lost that just kind of wrap it all up in the portal for us right here? Because I think, at least from my perspective, not following it on a day-to-day, I kind of just assumed there would be more, and it's just been the one since last week.
Yeah, like I've been saying, like the players that left OU in this transfer portal cycle was a lot more to do with playing time. They weren't going to get the playing time that they were looking for, and so that's why I had always thought there's going to be one outfielder and a pitcher that's going to leave Oklahoma this offseason. That's kind of what I reported initially after the season, and they saw the outfielder leave and a couple outfielders leave actually, but they didn't get a pitcher that actually left, and so that changes some things about who can they go after, because there's a really, really good pitcher out there still available, Maya Johnson from Belmont, who led the nation in strikeouts this year, and she's a lefty. And so if you put her on alongside, Sydney, it would look really good for you. But Oklahoma just has too many pitchers at this point in time. Like it's going to be, that would be like the eighth arm on the staff. And so once Sophia Bordy kind of like nudged that she's going to be back this season, I think that put all that talk to an end. And so that's where it's at for her. And I wasn't sure if OU was going to have another catcher leave as well, because, they didn't get the production they wanted this season in catcher, because there's another really good prospect that's in the portal right now that you could, grab a catcher with Grace Johnson from UConn, who was an all-conference player over there. And so like she would be available, but with the fact that nobody has left in those critical areas for OU, I think this is going to be it for OU overall. Now, obviously, the transfer portal is closed on Monday, but another name could appear later because it takes a day or two to get in there. But just right now, I haven't heard anything that would indicate that. Pretty much is where it's at right now. So I think OU is going to be done, which is still a really, really good squad. I mean, outside of Texas, Texas Tech, who has the greatest transfer portal class I've ever seen in my life, with 3 All-Americans, a top pitcher in the class, and they're still going. That's where OU is going to be. I think OU is going to be 1 or 2 based on that, even with adding just one player, because like we said, there were so many young players on this team that proved themselves and were All-Americans that they're in a good spot. They're in a good spot. If for those that care, the departures so far that have found a home is Hannah Core. She's going to Nebraska with Jordy Ball, which is kind of what I had speculated on Sooners Illustrated as well. And then Katie Lee McKay, the hometown kid from Caddo, Oklahoma, she's going to North Texas. So that another good spot for her where she can she could probably play a lot there. So that'll be a good spot for her. So those are the 2 that have found homes in terms of who's all in the portal. Now, I know Corey Hicks, the freshman catcher that left OU, I think Alabama is really going after her. I've heard that from them. And I've also heard that Maya Bland may Texas A&M or Alabama as well could be a spot for her. So keep on the lookout for those 2 and where they end up.
Yeah, polar opposite approaches from Oklahoma and Texas Tech. You mentioned it. Texas Tech softball has made kind of national news basically for their transfer portal and throwing some crazy money around, to bring in this class that's like insane, on top of obviously Nigeria Kennedy they had who they brought in last year and will be back certainly, obviously next year for Texas Tech. Oklahoma just the one. And, it's, I think, a little bit of a confirmation and a belief from Patty Gasso and this staff that they think that what they have is enough, to win. Obviously, it's not like they were far away from doing it this year. I mean, they were in the semifinals with the WCWS. You went and you had one very obvious need, which is to replace Sam Landry as your ace. They did that with Sydney Berzon. And, again, I think I kind of just assumed that there'll probably be a couple more, but if you don't feel like you need it, you didn't lose anything too damaging. You're bringing back the vast majority of your production. You have some high school players coming in that you're really excited about.
The top class coming in. That's the big difference.
One of the best ever, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to go hard in the portal. So we'll see how it shakes out. Obviously, we won't know if it was the right move, quote unquote, until this time next year, basically, whenever the season is over, and we'll see how it shakes out. It's like they probably should have added this or whatever.
Yeah.
But if Patty Gasso and this staff feels good about what they have and what they have coming in from the high school level, they just wanted one big name pitcher. Who might argue with that mindset and that approach? So we'll see how it shakes out. But interesting because not that OU softball's ever gone nuts in the portal, but you could always count on at least a handful. And right now, just the one with Sydney Berzon. We'll see.
Like I said, they had to do it last year because they graduated 10 seniors.
Right, everyone left. Yeah,
everybody's gone. Yeah, you don't really have that situation this time around. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, I feel like it would be really good to have Maya Johnson, the left-handed pitcher from Belmont, who's a strikeout machine, on the staff. But it's just like I don't know where the room is for, and you can't really put anybody else in the portal now. It's done. So,
not to put you on the spot, who do you think is going to play first base with Sydney Sanders moving on?
I think it's Sydney Barker. I think it's Sydney Barker. She's going to move back from the outfield. She's a shortstop, naturally, but she just has the versatility to play so many different positions that she was in the outfield because OU needed her bat, in the postseason. And they kind of pushed Hannah Cora out from that, defensive spot in the outfield because they needed Sydney Barker. But she played first a couple of games when Sydney Sanders took a rest. And so I feel like that's the, just what it should look like. It's going to be her, unless Ella Parker just decides, I want to play the field too. And then maybe she'll go to first base, and that could be the thing. But I think as of right now, it's Sydney Barker going to play first.
That makes sense. Got a lot of these names that kind of broke on the scene this year will be back. It'd be a fun team, obviously, again next year. I'm excited to see Berzon. And you mentioned Sophia Bordy. That's a big, headline. Sounds positive there that she'll be back with the team, which is obviously huge. So a lot to be excited about, obviously, with that softball program. After what was a really good year. The 4-peat ended, but another really good year, and they'll be right back in the mix. And we'll continue to update you on Sooners Illustrated and certainly on the show here if there's any more movement in the portal or wherever over the course of the summer. Baseball side of things, they've been very active in the portal. Yeah. They added 2 more guys since our last show, so they're up to 5 total. Still expecting 1 more as well, but the 2 more that they have brought in Wichita State infielder Camden Johnson. This was an all AAC guy at third base for the Shockers last year. Wichita State has been a place that Oklahoma has gone to many times for transfer additions in the past, and they did it again here with Camden. Not a ton of power, but a really good, just pure hitter. The last 2 years for the Shockers, 116 starts. That's a lot of games.
Yeah.
326 average with an 819 OPS. Ooh. He gets on base. He gets hits. He gets on base. He's a really good fielder as well. Like I said, second team all AAC last year and the year before as a freshman and sophomore with Wichita State. Just a really rock solid player. And a lot of people asking, where does he play? I'm assuming that he's going to be your third baseman next year. Now, Dawson Willis is back, right? I mean, if he wants, the entire infield is back if they want. Dayton Taki at first base, Kyle Branch, Jackson Willis at shortstop, and then Dawson Willis, your third baseman. All those guys are back next year if they want. But Dawson Willis, an okay year in some respects. Didn't probably hit the way that I think Oklahoma was hoping he would hit. He certainly played a pretty good defensive third base for the most part over the course of the year. But I think that they have upgraded third base here with Camden Johnson. That would be, my read of that situation. We'll see how it actually shakes out. If Dawson Willis is still here, do they try to shift things around in other ways? And can any of these guys move to the outfield if needed? Like, that's all to be sorted out over the fall. And you're certainly going into the spring. But Camden Johnson's a really good third baseman and a good infielder and a good hitter. And so they make a nice addition there on the offensive side. And they add another pitcher, Joey McManus, who's a big, tall right-hander from Maryland. So he's kind of an interesting one because the numbers are not going to jump off the screen for you, right? His ERA was very high at Maryland. But this is one of those, I feel like, because when we had the story in Sooners Illustrated, that's what a lot of people, hopped onto in our VIP members, and fairly so. The numbers are not impressive at all at Maryland. You just have to kind of trust Skip Johnson. And the fact that he clearly, and it goes without saying, but clearly if Skip and this staff are adding him, they feel like there's something there they can work with from a pitching perspective. And look, I don't think McManus is being brought in to be the ace, right?
No, it's a situational.
He's a depth arm. He's a guy that you put in the bullpen. He has started games at Maryland, so maybe if things go well in the fall, he could back his way into like the Sunday job or something. Who knows, right? But he's an arm. He's an arm that has got some talent that Skip Johnson clearly this staff sees something they could do with. And again, he's thrown a lot of baseball in the Big Ten, and not the SEC, but the Big Ten. 30 games the last 2 years and 20 starts. Again, that's a lot of pitching the last 2 years for at the Power 5 level. So we'll see where they kind of put him in. We talked a little bit last week about LJ Mercurius from UNLV. They're likely going to have to replace their whole rotation. Malachi Witherspoon and Cade Crossland, who are both kind of question marks, both got invites to the MLB draft combine, along with Kyson Witherspoon, who obviously got one. That's a pretty good indicator to me that those guys are probably to get drafted high enough to be, guys who will sign, and maybe not, you never know. But, that was a little bit of like okay, these guys are probably gone then. So you're probably replacing your whole weekend rotation. So the more arms and the more options you have, the better. I really like LJ Mercurius, and, we'll see what happens. Like I said, still expecting one more portal addition at least from Oklahoma, likely another pitcher. And we'll see how that shakes out if that's the way it goes. But, a couple more nice ads. I really like the Camden Johnson ad. I think that's a guy who's probably going to be in your starting lineup on opening day, if I had to guess right now on June 17th. So nice addition there. And a good portal class for Oklahoma. 5 guys in, probably a 6th guy coming. Good portal class for Oklahoma baseball right now. I think they have to feel pretty good about.
Yeah, I really like anybody that went to Wichita State. That's a really good baseball program. That's something, that gets overlooked, I guess, and because of the football side of the school or something like that. But it's the baseball of that school is really, really good. And that's a top program to get guys from. And so that's good. I mean, and you said it, with getting the invite to the combine, I'm sure they've had a conversation as well. So it's like, okay, we know that you're likely going to leave. Let's go get us a third baseman. I think that's kind of like the way Skip's looking at it, because I don't think Skip would just be adding guys to add them. Doesn't seem very logical in terms of, having to pay guys now too. So like, it wouldn't work that way. So I think
the three weekend arms all got invites, and then Easton Carmichael, obviously very expected, also got a draft combine invite as well. Tom made the note on our VIP board too that Alec Blair also got an invite to the MLB draft combine.
Oh,
so
okay.
There as well.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit before. Obviously, the basketball and baseball signee for Porter Moser.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that he signs and he plays baseball right now. He never makes it OU.
Never makes it.
So another storyline to keep an eye on there, obviously. But so shout out to those 4 guys going out to the combine. Easton Carmichael and Kyson Witherspoon, also, by the way, both named perfect game All-Americans. So congratulations to both of them. That's really cool. And obviously a big statement of the years that they had. Both guys were just phenomenal all year, and well deserved to say the least. And we'll continue to keep an eye on the portal. Like I said, still expecting at least one more to be in the boat for Oklahoma baseball, probably before the next show. We'll see, obviously, but keep plugged in over Sooners Illustrated. We'll let you know when we know about that. But a good portal cycle so far for the Sooners. 5 guys in that I think if you told me all 5 of these guys have a role next year and are contributors, I could totally see that. And that's what you want in the portal. You're looking for instant help, right? Instant production. I think they're doing that with this portal class so far.
Any big names coming up in the high school recruiting side of it? That you're familiar with, or are there any big names coming up that could?
Yeah, they got a few. The obvious is Eli Wiltz, who's never going to make it here. Eli Wiltz is going to be a top 5 pick. Oklahoma's been on the wrong end of that a few times.
That's
guys. Yeah. You go back to Bobby Witt or whatever else, but nothing. It's so hard to know, and he doesn't play a lot of freshmen. Freshmen kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. Like this past year, it was Kyle Branch. Drew Dickerson came on late in the year. Mm-hmm. That's about it. The previous year you had Jackson Willits, who we kind of knew going in. Obviously with the Willits name that he had a chance to be really good, but it's kind of hard to know. Who's going to jump out and they do have a couple JUCO guys that I think will be instant, because JUCO is tough because you kind of forget about them. A lot of them commit and sign back in like October, and they play out their entire season. Mm-hmm. And then, then they actually come obviously in the summer, and then they're here for fall ball. You know, a lot of people question like their catcher needs with Easton Carmichael moving on. They've got a JUCO catcher coming in whose name's escaping me right now. That it wouldn't shock me at all if he's in the mix with Scott Mudler. Like, you know, so those kind of additions go under the radar. They don't grab a lot of headlines because, again, they happen in like October, and it's a JUCO guy. So it's like, how good is he really?
Yeah.
But there's a number of those types of guys that I fully expect to be legitimate contributors next year as well. And they're bringing a lot of the team back. You know, I mean, they're losing some key guys, but they're bringing a lot of their team back. A lot of their lineup is back. Like I said, the whole infield, Jason Walk, Drew Dickerson, Scott Mudler. You're replacing a lot on the pitching side, but your lineup is largely going to be intact from last year. And that's obviously a good feeling. You go add a couple bats like Camden Johnson and others. It's Nolan Stevens, who probably could DH for you. So King Broomball, we talked about before. So encouraging, exciting. I think there's reason to be optimistic right now with where the roster kind of stands as you move into the summer. A lot to be excited about right now with that program for sure. I think that's it. We'll be back next week as far as James, Tom, myself. Continue to kind of sift through the offseason, see what else is going on, and any other Diamond Sports stuff we'll get into as well. Colin and I will do the show later this week. Probably Thursday, maybe Friday. We'll obviously let you know. Keep an eye out on the podcast feed on the YouTube channel one way or another. Probably Thursday, maybe Friday, though, for that. And we'll be previewing the Champion Barbecue. So a lot to talk about there. You're not going to miss that show. Colin's always dialed in on the recruiting side. I feel like he's been extra dialed in this summer. He's been crushing it. So be sure to be with us later this week as we're going to set the stage for the Champion Barbecue. And then we'll be back, Tom, James, and myself, probably on next Monday to kind of wrap it all up and get anything else we need to get into: football, basketball, Diamond Sports, whatever's out there over the course of the summer. That's it for now. For James D. Jackson, Tom Green earlier, make sure to subscribe to Sooners Illustrated, Oklahoma247sports.com. I'm Josh Callaway. Signing off. We'll see you next time right back here, as always, on Sooners Illustrated.
See you.